Zhilei Zhang versus Agit Kabayel. Now, I've been out of the loop for a little bit, maybe about a month or so, and I've, started to get back into boxing, back into the boxing sphere in the lead up to this card. And from what I can see upon my arrival to the realm of boxing, is that a lot of people are picking Agit Kabayel, and they're picking him confidently too. And now I can certainly understand why. I think if you look at Agit Kabayel's last two fights, which have been quite big surprises in most people's eyes, where he's been able to systematically break down a big, strong, powerful man in Arslanbek Makhmudov and a smaller but mobile and very skilled fighter in Frank Sanchez. And now he's going up against Zhilei Zhang, a big, strong, powerful man who has suspect stamina. I can definitely understand why people would put two and two together and think, you know what, I think Agit Kabayel is going to do this, because he certainly showed the potential. Shows that he's got the tools. I think specifically it's his work to the body, him applying that slow, steady pressure, kind of tucking up fairly well in the process, and just being willing to invest in that body attack, make a concerted effort to try and drown his opponent, and then just break them down over the course of a few rounds. And he's been able to do that after pretty much fighting in obscurity, because Agit Kabayel really had his breakout performance, if you want to call it that, against Derek at the back end of 2017. That was on a Monte Carlo card. And was that when he won the EBU title? I'm pretty sure it was, if memory serves me correctly. And then just basically went back out into obscurity where he came from. Was basically content to fight there against fairly low-level opposition. And then came back on the Day of Reckoning card, beat Makhmudov, and then beat Frank Sanchez. And here he is now, and he's a bit of a dark horse, a bit of a player in the division. And really the same thing with Zhang as well. I remember, not as far back as Kabayel, but around 2021, Zhilei Zhang wasn't really impressing. He was getting a draw against Jerry Forrest, not looking that good in the process as well. Certainly didn't look like the force that he looks like now. I want to say both of these guys are definitely respected, but there is, I think Zhilei Zhang's a bit more revered at this point because he's had a few more wins. He had that performance against Hrgovic. Many people thought he beat Hrgovic, but I think Hrgovic probably won that. Obviously, sparked Joe Joyce out, dealt with him twice, dusted him off. Even though he lost to Joseph Parker, Zhang, he showed once again why he is so formidable, particularly in the early rounds. And then, of course, flattened Deontay Wilder in pretty comical fashion. That's such a wacky knockout. Zhang's really put in a lot of work, and he's shown why he's a serious player. And to a lesser extent, I want to say Agit Kabayel has, but potentially a bit more surprising in many people's eyes. And as I say, if we're going to get back to the stylistic match, I can certainly understand why people have confidence in Agit Kabayel in this matchup. However, I do think there's potentially people leaning a bit too much on his recent performances. And look, I gave Agit Kabayel a lot of credit. You can go back to my videos, my live stream after the Day of Reckoning card, after Fury Usyk. I gave Agit Kabayel credit because he didn't really put a foot wrong in those performances. He got the job done, pat on the back to him. But I think if we look at those wins objectively and in the cold light of day, you have Makhmudov, who was unproven. I think that's a way of putting it nicely. I think it's clear to see that Makhmudov isn't that good. And hindsight's 2020. I remember a lot of people were big on Makhmudov. I never was personally. I think we could look back to his fight with Carlos Takam and we see there are a lot of warning signs that this guy is potentially not this. He's not going to be the next big thing. He's quite limited. He's quite vulnerable in some regards. And so, yeah, it's like, how good is Makhmudov really? especially when he's gone on to be beaten again by Vianello. And some people may say that Agit Kabayel took something out of him, potentially, but as I say, I'd look back at his performances before the Kabayel fight, like Carlos Takam, and you see, yeah, this guy doesn't seem to be any great shakes. He's big, he's strong, but that's about it. And size and strength isn't enough in this day and age of heavyweight boxing. And then there's the Frank Sanchez fight. Now, Frank Sanchez, I think, was proven to at least a greater extent than Makhmudov, but clearly compromised. I know some people, they make the argument that Frank Sanchez always wore that knee brace in his fights, and therefore it shouldn't be unusual. However, just look at the way he was fighting against Kabayel, where he was essentially glued to the ropes. And this is a guy who likes to use his legs, who uses his legs well. They're almost a cornerstone of his boxing. And yeah, he clearly compromised, in my opinion, in my view. And look, Kabayel still got the job done against those guys. It wasn't like he got beaten by a limited fighter and he got beaten by a compromised fighter. But I do think we have to factor that in when he goes up against Zhang, who, let's assume he's not injured, or at least seriously injured. Zhang, I think, is a big step up, especially compared to Makhmudov. Zhang isn't just a big, strong puncher. He is quite an accomplished counter puncher. He's a good technician. And, you know, you probably have like a Makhmudov level puncher, and then a good couple leagues above, you have a Zhang puncher. I don't think this guy's punching power can be overstated, because it is serious. And the thing is, it's effortless as well. Like when you see Zhang throwing his punches, when you're watching the slow-mo, you don't see a big grimace. He's not forcing his power. Look at the punches that the knockdowns he scored against Joseph Parker, who, Joseph Parker's a sturdy guy. He's proven time and time again he's got a good chin. I know he got stopped by Joe Joyce, but that's because he fought a silly fight. He got dragged into the trenches over the course of a long fight and then got finally taken out. Joseph Parker was fresh in that first knockdown. And I'd say because the fight wasn't fought at a particularly blistering pace, he was probably had a decent amount of energy with the second knockdown against Zhang. But Zhang just had the timing, had the punch placement, and that's part of what makes his power impressive. Is, as I say, is it's effortless, but there's the accuracy, there's the actual technique of the punch. It's not scrappy, it's very compact. Just turns that shot over, bang, devastation. Same thing with Deontay Wilder. And obviously there's the way he sets up his punches. And I'm not sure if Agit Kabayel is going to be prepared for that. I'm sure Agit Kabayel has a degree of toughness, although in the lead up to this fight, I watched his fight against Agron Smakichi, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. And that was a scrap over like 3 rounds, I think it lasted. So check it out if you haven't seen it. I hadn't seen it. And Kabayel gets hurt. Gets hurt quite badly. And Smakichi's a 245-pound man, 6'6", and a southpaw, so there is some similarity there. But he's no Zhilei Zhang. And yeah, I think for me, as I say, I see the potential. I see how Kabayel, if he especially can get out of the early rounds, I think if he can last 5 rounds, then his chances of winning do rise quite considerably. Because Zhilei Zhang's not perfect. He does have weaknesses, and his kind of principal weakness is his gas tank. It is awful, let's be real. But he is dangerous. He is ominously dangerous in those first few rounds. And I think based on what I saw against Smakichi, where Smakichi was able to line up some fairly good offense. And it was basic, but it was well timed. It was compact. I think Zhilei Zhang's going to be able to do the same, but with more devastating effect. And so I suspect that he'll get a stoppage. I'm thinking around round 4, round 5. I think he might just... I think Kabayel might just be too easy to find. Unless he maybe changes up his tactics, uses his legs a bit more. But I think that would kind of be counter to what we've seen him do recently, where he's looked to push forward. Yeah, I just have to go with Kabayel for this, for Zhang in this one. You know, don't get me wrong. I think Kabayel, he does have a chance, but I think there is a little bit of recency bias where people are getting a bit carried away with his recent wins and maybe not being completely objective. And now I know some of you will know that Zhang is a personal favourite of mine to watch. However, I'll just signpost you to the fact that I have picked against Zhang before. I picked against him against Joseph Parker, and actually got that prediction spot on. You can check it, it's still on the channel. So I have no issue picking against Zhang, even though he is a fighter I do like watching quite a lot. I just think in this stylistic matchup, he's the better fighter. And I think, yeah, stylistically, he just has a better chance of winning. And yeah, I think Joseph Parker really showed you need a bit more. You know, I think Joseph Parker's a better boxer than Agit Kabayel. I think he's probably slightly tougher, more experienced, a bit more wily too. And so we saw Parker was, yeah, felt the effects of that power, but he was able to regroup and kind of diffuse Zhang a bit better and box quite nicely, I feel. But then I could say that Kabayel probably, even though he's not a better boxer in my eyes, offensively he's probably just a bit more formidable, potentially. But yeah, nevertheless, I'm going Zhilei Zhang, stoppage in round 4 or 5. Leaving your thoughts down below. What do you think? Are you one of the guys going for Kabayel, going for him heavily? Or do you agree with me and think Zhang's going to get the business done?